Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Salary Sacrifice Pensions in Stage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice, I'm your host and presenter for today's session, and I'm also joined by my colleague Duncan in the background, who's ready and waiting to answer your questions. Now, today's session is part of our Pensions Discovery 2025 badge series, where if you attend at least 5 of the sessions and the quiz, you'll earn your very own badge, but more on that towards the end of the session. And a little look at what we're going to be covering today too. I will start with an introduction to salary sacrifice pension schemes, so what they are, and a few considerations with them too. Followed by setting up and assigning your scheme, so how to do this, what settings to check, and how to actually assign it to your employees in payroll. We'll then have a section on checking the contributions, so making sure everything's calculating, and also if you do need to amend any of the contributions, how you'll be able to do this. And we'll finish up with a section on national insurance savings, so how to process the employer national insurance savings to an employee's pension scheme. So that is what we've got in store today. But what exactly is a salary sacrifice pension scheme then? So in simple terms, it's an arrangement where an employee agrees to give up a portion of their salary in exchange for their employer making an equivalent contribution to their pension. So this means instead of receiving their full salary and then paying into a pension, the contribution's actually made before tax and national insurance deductions. So that leads to potential savings for both the employee with tax and national insurance and the employer with national insurance too. Now, because the contributions are taken before tax and national insurance, it does help to maximise the amount that goes into the pension pot while also reducing the taxable income. So that is a huge benefit. It also means that employees don't contribute directly to their pension scheme though. So as a result, you won't see the kind of normal employee contribution in the enter payment screen as you would with other scheme types. You will see that slightly differently, but I will show you that towards a little bit later in the webinar in the demonstration. Employers are able to reinvest the national insurance savings as well into the business or even passed on to employees as additional pension contributions. So I'll talk about this again a little bit later, as we do have a new feature in Sage 50 Payroll as of version 31. But in general, if you do want to know a little bit more about salary sacrifice pensions, I have linked some really great information just at the bottom there, and that's from the HMRC website. Few considerations as well with salary sacrifice pensions before we dive into things. So firstly, relating to the national minimum wage. So you as the employer, you must ensure that the employee salary sacrifice contribution doesn't take the employee's pay below the national minimum wage. You can check this manually, but something helpful if you use the minimum wage check in payroll is that it won't factor the salary sacrifice pension into the national minimum wage calculation, but it will bring up a warning to remind you to check this. So payroll won't factor that pension amount into the calculations, but yeah, as you can see on that message on the left there, it will advise you to check and then amend the pension value if that's necessary. And you will also need to consider whether an employee is on statutory payments. So payroll doesn't deduct the employee's salary sacrifice amount from statutory payments. As an employer though, your contribution can be calculated from statutory payments. It does depend on the rules of your pension scheme as to whether it should or shouldn't. So if you're unsure about this, definitely contact your pension provider. But if it should use statutory payments in the calculations, you can edit these settings as necessary, and I'll show you what I mean when we go to the demonstration. But as I say, with either of these considerations, do refer to your pension provider if you want to know exactly how your scheme works. They'll definitely know more about your kind of individual schemes compared to what we know here. So yeah, just a couple of important things there to bear in mind. But if you do decide that a salary sacrifice pension scheme is what you want, it would then be a case of setting that up with your pension provider. And once everything is sorted their side, you'll then be able to set it up in payroll. Nice and easy to do, as long as you've got the information that you'll need. As the settings that you enter in the programme, these are going to determine how the pension contributions are calculated. So in terms of what information you're going to need to set the scheme up, I've just got a slide on kind of what you're going to need there. So first bit of information that you're going to need to know is it a qualifying scheme for automatic enrolment? Does it use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay? And if not, what pay elements are going to be pensionable? What are the contributions for the scheme? So is it going to be a fixed amount or a percentage per period, and for both, so employee and employer? And also, what's your provider reference? That's another piece of information that you'll have to input into the pension scheme in Payroll. So do double check these, make sure you've got the correct information. And once you've got it, it'll then be a case of setting up the scheme itself in Payroll. So I've just got a couple of screenshots here before we go into the demo in terms of how you're actually going to set this scheme up. But you're going to go to the company tasks in Payroll, and then you've got a whole section there on pension schemes. That middle image there, that kind of shows what you'll see there. So it is just some default generic pension schemes that you'll be able to rename and edit according to the settings and contributions of your pension scheme. And once you've set up the scheme, you will also need to consider your pay elements as well. So you need to set them up for pension contributions to determine whether they're going to be included or excluded from the calculations of the pension scheme contributions. If your payments count towards qualifying earnings as well, so that is one of the settings we'll be checking, you will see a tick box in the middle of the screen there called qualifying earnings. So you'll just need to tick this. And payments that count towards qualifying earnings are things like salary, commission, bonuses, a lot of your statutory payments too. Just a couple more examples on the right-hand side. But other than this, if the payments made using this pay element should be used to calculate pension contributions, a couple of other settings to check there too. So in the middle, you can see I've highlighted there the pension main tick box, pension AVC as well, so that's your additional voluntary contributions if there are any. They're used to calculate the employer contribution. And then on the left there, you've also got the salary sacrifice pension only tick box. That's used to calculate the employee's salary sacrifice amount. So you'd need to edit and repeat these steps just to double check each pay element that you've got, make sure it's subject to the right things using these tick boxes. And then Payroll's going to use these pay element settings along with the pension scheme settings to work out the contributions each period. So without further ado, let's dive into a demo, and I want to show you my pension scheme and the settings there, along with the pay elements that I've got for this company too. So I'm logged into my company. I've just got a monthly payroll here as an example, and let's just go straight to the pension schemes. So we can see them in the company section in the bottom left, and then the pension schemes at the top there. So in here, you will see you've just got a list of kind of default pension schemes there, but I have already set up my two schemes at the top. I've got a nest pension. I've also got one that I've called salary sacrifice too. So that is the one that we'll be focusing on today. One thing another kind of thing just to point out in this window too, so, you do have a box at the bottom to add in the enrolment review date if you wish. You can leave it blank like I have, but if you did want to just pop that in, this is just going to be the next date that you'd need to review your pension schemes for automatic enrolment. Do feel free to enter that if you wish. But let's select the salary sacrifice scheme. We'll focus on this one and I'll click edit. You might see this message as well. So this is just telling you that the scheme's in use by at least one employee. So just a reminder really. Changing anything in here will change things for the employees that it's assigned to, but we're more than okay to view these settings. So I'll click OK. And these are the pension scheme settings. So what I'll do in here, I'll just go through each of these tabs. We'll start with the details tab. So in here, you do have a reference number given to the scheme by Payroll. This is greyed out. You aren't able to change this, but you are able to change the description. So this is where you'd enter the name of your scheme. I've just called mine salary sacrifice. You've then got this drop down too. So this is where you'll be able to select the type of scheme that you're using. Got a whole selection in there. So just a case of kind of selecting which one is appropriate for you. Some of them do apply the relevant settings of that scheme type automatically. But if you can't see your scheme type in here, there is also the option of other, where you can just manually select those settings, and that's what I'll have it to today. The next few options, these are types of schemes which aren't used anymore. But then you've got things like GPP, so that's your group personal pension, or PPP, your personal pension plan. And some other things as well, so you've got your stakeholder too. I'm just going to leave mine set to other though. Next thing in here that you can enter, this is a SCON or a scheme contracted out number. Now these are no longer relevant since contracted out schemes have been abolished, so again just leave that blank. And then it'll be a case of moving on to kind of more of the main settings here. So we do have a few tick boxes here which relate to the automatic enrolment schemes. We've got qualifying scheme first, and then we've also got use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. Now you can see I've got qualifying scheme ticked, and this should be ticked just to indicate that your scheme is a qualifying scheme, and this basically means that it hits the minimum requirements set by the pensions regulator for use with automatic enrolment workplace pension schemes. So mine does hit those requirements, and I've just ticked that box there. The next tick box, this is for schemes that use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. Now this does apply to more recent schemes since the introduction of automatic enrolment. But on the presentation, I gave a list of the payments included in qualifying earnings. Essentially, it's any payment subject to tax and national insurance. Now, salary sacrifice schemes, they may or may not use qualifying earnings. Mine doesn't, so I've just left that unticked. But please double check with your provider if you're unsure whether it does or doesn't. Now, if my scheme did use qualifying earnings, this means that the contributions are going to be calculated on earnings between an upper and lower threshold. And you can find those thresholds in your company legislation. And Duncan will be covering this a little bit more in the pensions calculations webinar of the series too. So if you do want to see a little bit more about how the settings kind of affect how things are calculated, he will be going through that in more detail in that webinar. You do also have the minimum employment period box. So if your scheme is a qualifying scheme for automatic enrolment, do leave that blank. But if you do need to apply a minimum employment period before enrolment, you could apply that as necessary. So, for example, if your company required people to be employed for 3 months before joining the scheme, you can apply that in here, and that's also called a postponement. And then a couple more main settings at the bottom here for this scheme. So if your scheme is salary sacrifice, make sure to tick this box. And then something new is this add employer national insurance savings to pension contribution tick box. So I did kind of touch on this before, but some pension providers do allow the reinvestment of the national insurance savings for employers and or employees into the pension when you've got a salary sacrifice scheme. So from version 31 of Payroll, so that came out around payroll year end, you can automatically add the employer national insurance savings to the contribution by ticking this box. So that will calculate it for you and add it onto the contribution. And I'll show you that later on in a demo. I will show you kind of how much it adds and where you'll be able to view that in enter payments too. But I'll leave that blank for now. So that's the details tab. Let's move along to the employee tab as well. Not as much in this one, but at the top you do have the option of selecting the contribution. So at the moment I've just got mine set to a percentage in 5. But you do have the option of a fixed amount as well. So just whatever your scheme is in there, along with the amount. And on the right, you can see include statutory payments tick boxes. These are all greyed out and they're all blank. And that is actually because of what I mentioned before about payroll not deducting the employee salary sacrifice amount from a statutory payment. So you're not able to change this. Moving on to the employer tab though, same option to select that fixed amount or percentage and then enter the contribution here as needed. Got mine set to 3%. And just note as well this message to say that the employer contribution is in addition to the salary sacrifice made by the employee too. And I'll show you shortly where you can check that amount. On the right, you do have these tick boxes as well. And this is just how you can tell payroll that the employer contribution will be calculated from statutory payments. So mine's ticked. So if we did have an employee getting, for example, £400 paternity pay one period, that £400 would also be included and used in finding this 3% contribution. So that's how you can specify whether payroll uses those statutory payments. And then lastly, you've got the provider tab. So this is where you can check the provider details, such as the provider's name and the reference as well, and some of the details on the right-hand side. So just fill this in as necessary, but the provider's reference that I said you'd need, this is where you'll be able to input that there. So that's how my scheme is set up, the salary sacrifice scheme. A little bit more information about those settings too, but I have linked more information about these settings on the slide, so be sure to download the handout for that. and you'll be able to kind of see what each what each setting is. Perfect. I'll just close those schemes down though. Now, other than this, I did say it's really important to check your pay element settings too, so we'll take a look at these now. That's just two options below pension schemes. So remember, you will need to make sure that any payments that should be included in pension calculations have the correct settings for this. So these are the pay elements I've got set up in this company. I'm just going to check through them and show you the settings that I've got. First one is just basic pay. I'll click edit at the bottom. And hopefully you'll recognise the screen from the sides. But what we're bothered about in here are these tick boxes in the middle. So where it says this payment is subject to, we've just got a couple of tick boxes in here to check. So qualifying earnings for the basic pay is ticked. Pretty much all payments subject to tax and national insurance should have qualifying earnings ticked. But I did have a bit more information on the slides there. So this is things like salary, commission, bonuses, etc. We've then got pension main and pension AVC ticked as well. So we do want to include this basic pay element as pensionable for the main contribution and for any additional voluntary contributions that there might be as well. And these tick boxes are used to calculate the employer's contribution. And then on the left, because we have a salary sacrifice scheme, this tick box is used to calculate that amount that the employee will be sacrificing. So I have also got that tick too. So all four of those pension tick boxes are ticked on this one. So that means that this pay element is fully pensionable, and anything paid to this employee through this basic pay element will be included in the calculations for pension contributions, whether that's towards the employer's contribution or the employee salary sacrifice amount. And I'll just click OK to save those settings. But next pay element I want to show you, quite the opposite for this one, is expenses. So again, I'll click edit, and in this one I want to make sure that I've got the pension boxes unticked. So this does not count towards qualifying earnings. It also does not count towards any of the pension either. So we'll just see everything is blank in there for that one. Next is commission. Now this is subject to be included towards the employee's qualifying earnings. So we'll see that's ticked. However, my particular pension scheme with Nest only requires the basic pay element to be included in the calculations for the contributions. So we can see the other three pension tick boxes here are blank, they're unticked. So yeah, as part of my specific pension scheme, it's not included towards the calculations, only the qualifying earnings. So that's the only one I've got ticked there. And it's just the same story for overtime too. If I click edit, we can see it's only included towards qualifying earnings, but not the pension contributions themselves. So that's just all of the pay elements there that I've got set up for my company. Now, a little top tip from me as well, if you do have a lot of pay elements to check through and check the settings of, there is a report that you can run to help you check them a little bit quicker. You'll find this just in the report section above your employee list. And I've actually got it favorited there, but you can also find it in the company section. And it's called the payment types report. So if I preview this and just show you, make that a little bit bigger. So this report's going to show you all of the different settings of your pay elements, so you can more effectively check which ones are subject to pension and qualifying earnings and things like that. And you can check whether it's a Y for yes or an N for no. So yes, the tick box is ticked, or no, it's not. And it just allows you to check all of the pay elements a little bit quicker. And if you do need to change any of them, it just means you can quickly see which ones you'll need to change without kind of individually checking through all of the elements in the pay elements section instead. That's a payment types report. But you can see you've got the pension AVC, qualifying earnings, and the salary sacrifice tick boxes. That information is on there. So a little recap there. So you will set up your pension scheme according to the information that you've got from your pension provider. And that's just in company and pension schemes. And then after this, it's going to be checking your pay elements just to determine whether they're included in qualifying earnings or not, or towards the pension calculations too. Now, once your scheme is all set up, it is then time to assign the scheme to the relevant employees. So a pension scheme can be assigned manually in the employee record or automatically via the pension assessment. So that's for those of you who are pensions module users. If you are a pensions module user, we just want to make it apparent here, it is really important to let the pension assessment do all of that for you. So don't manually assign the pension scheme. If you use the pensions module, the pension assessment will do all of that for you. And we do have a webinar going through all of the things relating to the pension assessment, where I'll show you how you'd go ahead and assess your employees and assign the schemes if necessary too. But yes, today I will be showing you how to manually assign a scheme for those of you who are not pensions module users. So we'll just pop back to the demo. So for those of you who will be doing it manually, I just want to show you how to do this. Now, for the sake of today's webinar, I have actually already assigned a scheme to the employees, but I just want to focus on employee number 3. So they're on the salary sacrifice scheme. So I'll open up the record. And if you did want to assign a scheme to an employee, you would go to the Pensions tab. And you would just go ahead and click Manage Schemes. As you can see, I do already have one in here. We can see the primary scheme is the salary sacrifice scheme. We'll go ahead and kind of show you where you would do that. If you did need to add one, it would just be a case of clicking Add. So I'll show you how you would do it. First thing you would do in this window is to just select the scheme that you're going to add to them. So this will come up with all of the schemes that you've got set up in the company. We can see the 2 at the top, which I've got, followed by just those kind of blank ones at the bottom. So let's say I was adding the salary sacrifice scheme to them. I'd select that from the drop down. I would click OK. I would add a joint scheme date, which is just set to what my process date currently is. But you can change that if necessary. And we can see at the bottom, it has also pulled through what it's specified for the contributions when setting up the scheme and payroll. So we've just got the kind of basic 5% and 3%, which are set up at a company level. But if you did need to amend an employee's contribution, this is where you'll be able to do so. And I'll show you that a bit later too. So that's where you would assign a scheme manually. So you're just in the Pensions tab, Manage Schemes, and then you go ahead and click Add. Now, if you're introducing a new pension scheme or you've just got a lot of people to add in general, you don't have to individually do it that way for everyone by going to the record. You are able to use something called a global change, and that will add it to multiple or all employees at once. And I just want to show you where you do that now. So let's imagine nobody was in a scheme and I wanted to assign the salary sacrifice scheme to everyone. I could highlight everyone here, and then I would go to Tasks and Global Changes. You've got the option here. I'd go down to Pensions, and I would click Add Pension Scheme. So this will globally, as in for everyone highlighted, add it for everyone. Again, just select the scheme from the drop-down. So I would add the salary sacrifice scheme to them. I'd specify whether it's going to be the primary scheme, and it will be a case of clicking OK. And that will confirm you want to make those changes. And then you'll go ahead and click Yes to add that to everyone and make the changes to them. So that is an option there to add it to multiple employees, just to save you from doing that individually. But that is 2 ways that you can assign a pension scheme, so either individually in the record, or of course using that global change. So that was just in Tasks, Global Changes, Pensions, and Add a Pension Scheme. But that does bring us on to the next section of the webinar. So we've got those schemes assigned there, and it's now going to be a case of checking the pension contributions and also how to amend them if we need to as well. So once a scheme is assigned, each pay period, payroll is going to calculate the contributions based on the settings of the scheme, your pay element settings, and of course how much the employee is getting paid to. And you'll be able to view the current period's contributions in Enter Payments. So we do have a scheme assigned to this employee in particular. I do want to just double check in Enter Payments and show you how you check these contributions. Now, I have already set my process date to my next pay date. I see that's set in the bottom right corner there to the 30th of June. So I'm going to go to the payroll tasks here and then just go to Enter Payments. Perfect. So I've got their payments as normal in here. I've already kind of checked that, and I've just made sure they're getting their salary as normal. So remember as well, we did specify whether we wanted these pay elements to be included or excluded from the qualifying earnings and from the pension calculations too. And if we just go across to the summary tab, again, payments on the left, deductions on the right as normal. Now for most pension schemes, an employee's contribution would show on the right-hand side here, just in this box. But since this employee's is a salary sacrifice scheme, it's technically not an employee contribution. Instead, it's a sacrificed amount. So it will show a little bit differently. We can see it's actually blank in this box at the moment. So instead, to view this, if we click on the employer's box at the bottom, this is actually going to show a combined total of the employer contribution and the salary sacrifice amount from the employee. So I can see that's calculating as expected, and it's showing a combined total of £200. So something else to show you as well, if we go back to the payments tab, at the bottom we've got this gross to net summary, and I've actually got a separate box in here to show me the employee salary sacrifice amount, which for this period is £125. So remember, that's taken before tax and national insurance is calculated and deducted. So back to the summary tab, if I just go to that employer's box, we know that this is now £125 salary sacrifice amount plus £75 for the employer contribution. Now let's say the employee requested to change their contribution with their provider and you needed to reflect this in payroll. Little tip from me is to just click this icon in the top of Enter Payments. This is going to be a shortcut to the employee's record for you. If you've got a lot of employees that you're working through in Enter Payments, it's just a good way of getting to the record without closing out and kind of losing your space. So in here, we're going to go back to pensions and we're going to go ahead and amend this contribution for them. So we'll go to Manage Schemes and then click Edit. And we are able to review them down here. So percentage of fixed amount plus the amount as well for employee, additional voluntary contributions and employer contributions too. So I'm just going to amend this to what the employee has requested with the providers, that is 7%. So I'll change that there. And when I click OK and save the record, and then we go back to Enter Payments, straight away I can see an increase in that combined total there. So straight away that's been reflected for them. So the combined total is now £250. So it's overridden the sacrifice amount for the employee, nobody else, and it's increased that to £175. So even if you do have any other employees on the same salary sacrifice scheme, we've only changed the individual's contribution in their record, and it would remain as that amount until it's manually changed back again. And just a reminder, if you are unsure what the contributions should be, please make sure to check with your pension provider. Also consider what I've talked about at the beginning of the webinar too. So you must make sure that the sacrifice amount doesn't take the employee's pay below the minimum wage. And if you do use the minimum wage check, you will get a warning message prompting you to check this if they're on a salary sacrifice scheme. But that is where you'd view the contributions and enter payments. So do remember, salary sacrifice schemes do show a little bit differently. So they'll show a combined contribution in the employer box. Nothing shows in the employee deduction side of things. And then on the payments tab as well, you will get an amount of what they're sacrificing for the current period. And if you do need to amend the contributions, you'll be able to do that in the record. So you can go to the pensions tab, manage schemes, edit, and then as needed, you can change the employee or employer amounts in there from fixed amounts to percentages, and of course change the amounts too. But now that we checked that, that does actually bring us on to the last section of the webinar. So this is processing national insurance savings. And on this section, we are going to focus on the employer savings. So since the version 31 update to the programme, there has been a new feature allowing you, if you want to automatically add the employer national insurance savings to pension contributions. So again, this is just for the employer's savings. It does work a little bit differently for employees and directors too. So for directors, this calculation will only occur in the final period of the tax year and covers the savings across the whole year. And this is to match the way that the director's national insurance is calculated, just to ensure that that's accurate. Director's national insurance is cumulative in the final period of the tax year. But in this section and for this new feature as well, it is focused on the employer national insurance savings to automatically calculate and add those on. I have linked more information on employees and directors though, if you do want to know a little bit more about that, just by following the link on this slide. Now, if you do decide that you want to reinvest the employer's national insurance savings, there is one tick box to check in the pension scheme settings, and that's going to prompt Payroll to calculate and reinvest those savings that the salary sacrifice scheme creates. So to finish off this webinar, we will have a look at that in a demonstration. So I did kind of show you a sneak peek of this setting before, but it's just going to be in the pension scheme itself. So we'll go back to company. We'll go to pension schemes and we'll edit this salary sacrifice scheme. And remember, because we do have it assigned to at least one person, we do get this kind of reminder message there. So I'll click OK to this, and these are the settings. So this is the only tick box that I'm going to need to tick for this. It is only available for salary sacrifice schemes, obviously. So just if you do want to add those savings to the pension contribution, make sure you've got that ticked. That's going to tell Payroll that we want to do this. And then click OK to save those settings. And just to show you the difference that's made, we'll use the same employee as an example. Go back to enter payments. Perfect. So in the payments tab, I can still see that salary sacrifice amount is £175. So that's after we amended the contribution to 7%. But if we go to this employer box in the summary tab, instead of the £250 that we had, we now have £276.25. So what this consists of is the £175 employee salary sacrifice amount, the £75 employer contribution of 3%, and now we've got an extra £26.25. So that's the employer national insurance savings that we've reinvested. So Payroll's worked that out automatically and added that on for us. Now, if you do have that setting ticked, you don't need to make any changes each period that you process. As I say, it will just continue with that extra contribution as long as that setting is ticked. So much easier than before this update. It did have to be done manually before this. But we'll click OK, and that would be me good to go from here. Now, a common question we do get asked around this new feature is whether a custom percentage of the employer national insurance savings can be added automatically. That's not possible though for this feature, just to bear that in mind. If you did want to add a custom percentage of that savings, it would be a case of working that out each period and then amending the contribution manually, as I've showed you in the employee's record. So essentially just doing it how it was done kind of before this feature came out. But as I say, more information about reinvesting these savings and what to do with employees and directors' national insurance savings can be found using the links on the handout, as well as on the Help Centre too. But that does bring us to the end of the main content for salary sacrifice pensions. So before we wrap things up, I've just got a little bit of further support to go through with you. And I first want to talk about webinars. So for webinars, me and Duncan do have loads coming up this month and next month too, including more pensions webinars. So things like the pension assessment, pension calculations, etc. All part of that Pensions Discovery digital badge series. So to tell you a little bit more about this, I do have a short video to show you. So I'll play this, I'll tell you all about the badge and kind of how you can get that. And then I'll be back in a couple of moments to go through the rest of the further support.
Get ready to earn your Pension Discovery badge with Sage 50 Payroll. Join us this June for our fantastic new webinar series, where you'll learn everything you need to know about pensions to get you ready to confidently process pensions for your employees. With 7 live sessions and a fun learning quiz in the last session. Whether you're new to pensions or a dab hand, we have something for everyone. Here is what we've got lined up for you. Make a strong start to your pension processing with foundational knowledge on the basics of pensions and salary sacrifice pensions in Sage 50 Payroll. Explore how pension contributions are calculated and how your employees are assessed for automatic enrolment. We'll also take you through our 3 most popular sessions: navigating enrolment, getting started with pensions module, and using pensions data exchange to send your pension data to your provider with ease. And lastly, backed by popular demand, test your knowledge with our Pensions Discovery Quiz to see what you've learned across the sessions. Now, how do you get your hands on your Pensions Discovery digital badge? Simply attend 5 out of 7 of the live sessions and our quiz to earn your badge. And don't forget, you get free access to our new Credible portal to manage your badges, so you can quickly and easily share your badge on socials for everyone to see. Don't miss out. Secure your spot and join us for an unforgettable learning experience this June by signing up at sage.co.uk/webinars. We'll see you there.
Great, that's just me back again. And that was my colleague Matt just telling you more about this pensions badge. And yeah, all of the sessions that are coming up for it too. So that's running until the 26th of June. We also have the Sage Help Centre too. So this is where you'll be able to search the knowledge base. You can access different support guides, demonstration videos as well. And we do have a webinar section where you can view all of the recordings of previous sessions that we've done. And should you need to get into contact with us at all, you can contact technical support and things. You've got all of those options on there too. So that's sage.co.uk/help. And last thing to point out is Sage University. So that's just sageu.com. Here you can set up a free account and you can access different e-learning courses and bite-sized learning as well. And you do have the opportunity to earn a product certification too. So if you've got Sage 50 Payroll, Sage 50 Accounts, Sage HR, for example, really great way to expand your knowledge on those and a whole variety of other products too. But that has brought us to the end of our webinar. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. If you are leaving us now, just remember you can download the handouts and feel free to copy and paste any of the Q&A if you want to keep any of those questions or answers. And then last thing from me, you will see a short survey as you exit the webinar. So if you do have just a moment to fill that out, I would really, really appreciate that. Me and Duncan do read all of the feedback and try to make these webinars the best that they can be. But I can still see a couple of outstanding questions there in the questions panel. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to answer those. Stick around while I do, and feel free again to copy and paste those answers that I give if you do want to keep them for future reference. For the rest of you, keep an eye on your emails for a recording of the webinar coming through too. But yeah, I will be on mute for a couple of minutes just while we get those answers out, and then I'll be back to say goodbye. Hello everyone, that's just me back again. It looks like we have answered all of those questions now, so thank you so much for keeping Duncan busy on the Q&A there. But that's it from us, so we really hope you enjoy the rest of your week. We'd love to see you on some more of the pensions webinars and next month's webinars too. So yeah, we will see you next time, and it is goodbye for now.